Good evening and welcome. We're going to call to order the regular meeting for the Akron Public Schools Board of Education for Monday, November 30th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar.
Here.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Mr. Bravo.
Here.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are fortunate tonight to have with us one of our student representatives to the Board of Education, Salam Saeed from the Akron Early College High School, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If I could ask everyone to please mute your microphones except for Salam whenever you're ready.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Our first order of business, of course, is community and school reflections. I'd like to open it up to the board if anyone has any. And because we have so many people in the meeting, if you drop me a line in the chat too, so I know you're waiting, I don't want to miss anyone. Would anyone like to get us started? All right, hearing and seeing none, we will move to the second item on the agenda, which is our request to address the board. Item 1.4, we have had an addition. Mr. Reynolds has requested to address the board. And Mr. Reynolds, whenever you're ready, Mr. Pendleton will help you keep time. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, board members. I just want to kind of echo some of what I've said before. There are a lot of people who are losing hope for the school year. And as someone who at the end of October, both me and my wife had the coronavirus, as someone who lived through it, I request that you guys seriously consider what the rest of the year will look like, and consider some sort of back to school model. I have 2 kindergarteners, and I'm concerned, like many others are concerned, that this school shutdown, well, not quite school shutdown, but online, will last the entire year, and that will put them behind significantly, because your younger kids, kindergarten is where they learn classroom decorum, how to act, how to do, and you just don't get that in Zoom or in Google Classrooms. So I would ask that you consider that as you make any decisions, and consider really coming up with a plan to get our kids back in school. Everyone who deals with the health has said that schools are not a mass spreader. Right now, I understand the issues we are in with a lot of spread, but honestly, the school will require masks, will clean well, and will disinfect well. And I really don't think our schools would be spreader locations. Because if you do what you're supposed to do and you follow the protocol, it does not spread in schools. Occasionally there are issues. As I know, working with Head Start, there's occasionally issues where a kid or someone was asymptomatic and something happens. But you have that in your plan, and you work through that process if something happens like that. But I would encourage you to give the parents and the teachers of some of these students a little hope as far as getting our kids back in school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. We appreciate you addressing the board tonight. And before we have no recognitions this evening, we do have a couple of items under communications. Before we do, I know that we have done community and school reflections. We've offered that already, but I know our student representatives to the board usually wait until after the board has gone. I want to make sure, Salam, did you have anything that you wanted to report out or share this evening? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Oh, no, it's fine. I do have one thing. It's the main reason I'm here. If that's all right, I'd like to present it now.
Okay.
Oh, I can begin now?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Oh, I said I do have like one thing I guess you could say I do want to report.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Salam Said, and I am a junior at Akron College High School, and I want to become a nurse practitioner. This is my third year serving on the student board. My first year serving was starting and fresh. Would you like me to start from the beginning?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Salam Said, and I am a junior at Akron College High School. I want to become a nurse practitioner. This is my third year serving on the student board. My first year serving were exciting and fresh. The student board was able to go to the State House in Columbus, Ohio for a human trafficking workshop. The workshop left an impact on me because we were having real life stories from actual people, not a YouTube video. The student board was constantly meeting new people. I saw Lisa Mansfield at the science fair last year, and we talked about the student board members being on the award stage at this year's science fair. I was anticipating it to happen. It would have been a cool experience. Considering this is my third year, many things are different. We are all looking at a computer screen, and I and other students can vouch that this year is challenging. I get an assignment every single day. And it feels suffocating when I know an assignment is due. If it's like a competition with myself in time. I feel like I'm running a race and I can't look back. I ran track in the 7th grade. On track, when you're running in the race, you don't look back until you get to the goal line. In track, normally I would look back and say, I ran that race. Look what I have accomplished. But, oh, look what okay. But school in the virtual world is like running track. But when I cross the line, I don't get to look back at what I have accomplished. When I submit my assignments at 11:59 on Sundays, I don't get to look back at the pages I wrote or be proud of the work I have done. I just say next, move on. I write my assignments for the following week. I feel like I'm in a rut. Sometimes I do my assignments at 2 a.m. in the morning. The bonds that students and teachers share creating the school environment is different. In face-to-face, you are forced to speak and answer questions, but you are in a classroom. In virtual school, you can easily hide by cutting off the camera and not speak. It's comforting, but it's in conflict with myself. I do want to engage, and I know the answers, but I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. It is easier to have my cup of coffee with my hair messy than to turn on the camera. Honestly, each kid is different. There are no permanent solutions, but there are temporary suggestions. Number one, is there a way that only teachers can see the students' answers in the chat box? Sometimes students are afraid that they have the wrong answer and they don't want to embarrass themselves in class. Decide what answer to say, and the students can avoid being embarrassed. I feel more students will participate in this way. Number two, students and teachers need breaks, even if it's an hour. Your mind feels physically and mentally heavy, and this can get to you a lot. On asynchronous days, no new assignments should be given. Students should have an actual weekend to rest and not have to complete assignments that are due on Monday. Number 3, students need more understanding. Sometimes the Wi-Fi cuts out. Sometimes there are issues and students may have to log in late. We need real advice to help us calm down and handle the mental stress. Thank you for taking my suggestions into consideration. On a positive note, my sister Ahlam is a ninth grader at Akron College. Her favorite teacher, Mr. O'Neill, has a really fun virtual lessons. His perseverance as a teacher does not let COVID-19 get in the way of his plans. He had a mock trial in his class. My sister said it was a unique and fun experience. My sister said everyone participated, including the shy students. My sister won the mock trial. She was a prosecutor. On the behalf of the student board, we look forward to our virtual meeting with the board members on Wednesday, and the student board wishes good health to all students, staff, and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Salam. We always appreciate hearing from you and really appreciate your perspective today and the questions you ask. I was taking a couple of notes, and I'm sure others were as well. Appreciate the suggestions. All right, for communications under section 3 of your agenda, we do have a couple of things this evening. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Dr. Ellen McWilliams-Woods, along with our Instructional Policy Committee for our College and Career Academies of Akron Middle School Master Plan discussion.
Thank you very much. It is wonderful.
Hold on one second. I think we lost Miss McKittrick.
Okay.
I'm back. Sorry, I'm having bad luck tonight.
All right. Thank you. Glad you're back. Sorry, Dr. McWilliams-Woods. Go ahead.
That's absolutely fine. This is the world of this remote education and remote meetings. So we're all learning to be flexible. So we're very pleased to be here tonight, and our Instructional Policy Committee members will wrap up at the end with some comments. But we're here to give you just a short recap from our presentation, our special board meeting just a few weeks ago, that we focused deeply on our middle school transformation. And we have quite a few partners here that are our major funders and strategy partners and implementation partners that I'll introduce towards the end of our segment to thank them for all of their efforts as we move our high school, college and career academy concept to the middle school to make sure that our students are prepared. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Black.
Good evening. Rachel, if you could present the screen, thank you. Tonight, you guys are going to hear from the glue of the middle school transformation. And the glue of the middle school transformation also made sure that in this transformation, we not only followed what it was going to take for us to be a #1 urban, which is making sure that we focused on high quality teaching and learning, focused on learning conditions, also focused on business and community engagement, but also making sure that with our partner of the next generation, that we also followed the model that was in place at our high schools. And the model that was in place in our high school, all high schools also focused on transforming teaching and learning, focusing on the learning conditions, and ensuring that our students had more civic engagement. And we're going to first turn it over to who we call our convening partner, and that is the Akron Foundation. And with the Akron Foundation, John Garfalo not only helped us mend this together, but he also went over and beyond to help us partner with other nonprofits and local businesses to ensure that our students at the middle school had a authentic next generation view of what they can do to be learners in the next generation. So I'll turn it over to John Garfalo.
Thank you, Mr. Black, and I must say it's been indeed a pleasure to work with you and the rest of the APS staff on this endeavor. Good evening, school board. On behalf of our board and staff at Akron Community Foundation, let me first say how much we value our partnership with the Akron Public Schools. When we were first approached with this opportunity, we knew immediately that it was a space that we wanted to be in. One of the reasons being that we have a great relationship with over 500 nonprofit organizations in the community. And with our involvement, we were able to bring together many of those nonprofits to be part of this middle school transformation process. We realized, and next slide, Rachel. We realized that it was important for us to be involved in the co-design of the business engagement model, as well as to remain active as a member of the executive committee, which I've had a great pleasure of doing so over the past 12 to 14 months. And finally, ACF feels very strongly about our commitment to the schools, that we are proposing to fund a full-time partner broker position to be the link between the nonprofit community and the middle schools and the school system as a whole. Our board is actually meeting this coming Friday to approve a second installment payment towards this commitment, and it will be fully funded come next spring. So we are thrilled to be at the table. We are thrilled to be a part of this initiative, and we look forward to the future of what the middle school transformation holds. And we appreciate the opportunity to do that. With that, I will turn it over to Tamiko.
Thank you, John. Good evening, board. As you've seen in our master plan proposal, through the collaborative work with community businesses, nonprofit organizations, students, staff, and building leadership, we've identified 3 overarching themes that drive our work. Those 3 themes are instruction, habits of mind, that I've been fortunate to chair, climate and culture, led by Yvonne Culver, and social emotional learning, led by Megan Mannion. So to begin our instruction and habits of mind work, our team collaborated the expertise of our key stakeholders and coupled it with the amazing work found in our elementary schools, IB programs, STEM programs, and new tech to construct our proposal that will support our version of the portrait of the graduate. Rachel, you can go to the next. I'm sorry. To transform instruction, this group believes that it is best accomplished by what we ask our students to wrestle or inquire during their learning process, and to challenge them to do something with their knowledge. In IB, we ask students to use their newfound knowledge to think global, but act local to improve their local communities. In STEM, we ask students to use their knowledge to push the boundaries of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics that will lead to new discoveries and innovations. In new tech, we instill in our students to use their knowledge to not only transform their lives, but to enhance the lives of others around them. All of these examples are being planned and taught with an emphasis on inquiry or problem solving, but more importantly, creating a sense of action. Taking action is not only limited towards gaining acceptance into higher educational institutions, joining the military, or earning the most competitive wages, but to serve on boards, volunteer in your local community, and to start or support a nonprofit organization. To help our students better understand the community in which they live, we have identified service learning as an essential element of our model. This component will bring local nonprofits into our students' lives through guest speakers and experiential learning experiences, while committing to providing middle school students with service learning opportunities that are deeply rooted in their standards and planned and organized to be deeply rooted in their local communities. Our dedicated teachers, nonprofit organizations, students, and family members understand the need to change the way we prepare our students. We believe that by teaching through inquiry-based and problem-solving lens, that our students will be best positioned to use what they have learned to solve their real-world problems and to use this knowledge to change the world that they live in. By helping students take ownership of their learning, we believe that this connection will lead to improvements in our 8th grade math scores across the district, as the matrix in our grant outlines. Our team of teachers know that this shift in lesson plan design will require intense professional development that will begin pending the board's approval. As you can see, we are eager and excited to transform learning for our middle schools. And now you will have an opportunity to hear from Yvonne Culver, who leads the Climate and Culture Transformation Team. Thank you. Yvonne, you're muted.
Hello, as Tamiko said, I have the privilege of working with the climate and culture team. I promise I did not plant Salam, but as Salam so eloquently said, students achieve more when they have a sense of belonging and they feel that they are a part of something bigger than what they are. And the climate and culture team focused on some of those goals. And we had 5 overarching themes within our team. One was creating a welcoming and inclusive environment. 2 was providing and promoting equitable opportunities. 3, maintaining open communication, and that's two-way communication and collaboration among students, personnel, parents, community, and the Board of Education. Number 4 was establishing building-wide, clear, and consistent expectations for behavior. And number 5 was creating and sustaining positive relationships. And we wanted to make sure that that crossed all channels, adult to adult interactions, adult to student interactions, and student to student interactions. We realized that in order to do that, there are several things that we are going to have to do. And part of our plan includes cultural development so that we are able to honestly and openly see where we are and, more importantly, learn how to grow. We also wanted to make sure that we are truly treating our families as our educational partners and hearing from our voices and incorporating those messages. And we wanted to make sure that our teachers and our staff understand that they are a significant part of our climate and culture, and that they too have a voice, they too are heard, and that they too are filled as they consistently pour themselves into students on a daily basis. And as we talk about the individual needs of everyone involved at the school, you can't do that without looking at some social emotional learning. And so for that, we are going to turn it over to our third committee, Megan Mannion.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, board, and thank you, Salam, for your words of wisdom. Social emotional learning, we know that strong social emotional skills help us on our journey, both in the classroom as well as preparing us outside of our classrooms. So I have the privilege of working with 5 tactical teams that worked very hard, that were comprised of lead teachers, administrators, and community leaders. Each of those teams, as Tamiko and Yvonne talked about, were comprised of teachers, students, our families, our parents, our community members, as well as community leaders. Each tactical team worked diligently to make sure that we helped identify and map out ways for more equitable middle school practices with regards to transitions and support in relationship to social and emotional learning. We looked at professional development to support our staff with increasing our understanding and our knowledge of what social emotional learning is and how we can use that to support our students, as well as how we can implement trauma-informed practices and strategies throughout the day with our students. We looked at ways to explicitly teach our students strong social and emotional skills. This will assist our students in developing and creating self-regulation, maintaining strong, positive relationships, and making strong, responsible decisions as we work with our nonprofits. Students on our committee were very vocal in making sure that student agency was talked about. And so we do appreciate our student board member making sure that she demonstrated that this evening. We also looked at structures as another tactical team, and for both our we have both middle school and high school students sit on this team, and we talked about how we can support systems and align our structures to support our students coming into our middle schools, as well as leaving our middle schools and the various transitions that happen throughout the course of a school day. Lastly, our Parent and Family Engagement Committee worked diligently to create closer partnerships with our most important stakeholders, our families. Some of the outcomes that you can expect from this purposeful work from this dedicated team of teachers, students, staff, community leaders is an increase in teachers' knowledge and skills of what social emotional learning is and how to relate with our students. An increase in how students self-report on the Youth View survey that is given, as well as an overall increase in the average middle school attendance rate. During the school year, we will work with what Ron Garfalo just mentioned, our Akron Community Foundation, where we will identify a broker partner, and we will look at having family liaisons as well as academy coaches at our middle school. As we look into the 21-20 school year, we will look at begin partner development as well as experiential learning. And so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McWilliams-Woods, who is going to talk to us a little bit more about the budget.
So you've heard from our 3 leads in our 3 themes on the middle school college and career academy. And you can tell that the major focus is this connection to the community and working on our own social emotional learning, building those relationships, and making sure that the climate in our middle schools is supporting students and empowering them and their voice. Just so many compliments for our student board members every single time they're here. That's just a snapshot of what we envision for the student agency or student voice, as well as family voice that we've built into this middle school transformation. All of this couldn't happen obviously without a budget to support this. And in a similar way we did the high school, we mapped out 5-year budget that we talked about and introduced just the overarching theme at our special board meeting, and then worked through the finance committee and instructional policy. If we can flip to the next slide, Rachel. There's a few assumptions that we went into during this 5-year mapping out the budget of what this middle school transformation would take. Obviously, we're in a situation that we'll hear later on tonight about our 5-year forecast, and we're hitting a very critical point in this district. And so we knew we had to not put a strain on our local general fund money to support this transformation, particularly when we were looking at this critical point in our budget and looking at a potential levy down the road, that we knew we had to look at partnering with foundations to help support this work. We also looked at repurposing current money that we have to figure out how can we maximize what we currently have and shift money around, and then actively identify reductions as we were shifting those funds. You know, what could we stop doing? What could we now reclassify some funding to help support this middle school transformation? Ultimately, though, we knew we needed to make sure that after all of what our students have gone through, particularly this last year, we can't shortchange our students. And we did not want to get off track with this significant nationally recognized college and career academy transformation. And so that was our commitment. Next, Rachel. So the big idea of why this is so important and we couldn't get off track is this is the process and the methods that we're using to raise student achievement. We are wanting to make sure that we're keeping our innovative college and career academies on track with the high quality teachers, raising the bar with higher level courses built into this transformation. And you heard quite a bit about providing that mental health mentoring and that wraparound support for our students and families so that every single graduate is ready to move right into college, into career, or into the military. And ultimately, we're doing this as a central part of the workforce development in this community. And that's why we have the key partners that we have who are so critical to this transformation. So the high level review of the 5-year forecast budget, and these are the figures of new money each year. This isn't the total program budget. This is the actual every year over that 5 years. How much new money are we going to need to infuse? And this is what actually goes into the 5-year forecast then, the general fund portions of this. So the total 5-year forecast budget of new funds to support this is a little over $3 million. 1.779 of that is private grants and foundations that I'll talk about in a minute here. 696,000 is that retooled funding that I talked about, where we took current money and were able to reconfigure it to help support this transformation. And then the remainder, it's a little over $560,000, is new general fund money that we'll be allocating for this transformation. When you look at the list of names here on this slide, we have the GAR Foundation that has been our longest standing partner that has supported us from the birth of college and career academies all the way through and continues to support us in both the high school transformation and some funds to support this middle school. And as you know, a huge support for our elementary essential experiences and continued support of our elementary college and career academy strategies. The Martha Holden Jennings Foundation is our central funder for our middle school transformation, from the beginning supporting our master planning and then throughout now implementation for middle school. You've already heard about the Akron Community Foundation's involvement in the master planning process and the funding for our partner broker. And then I was pleased to be able to announce at Instructional Policy that we received new funding from the Hewlett Foundation for $1.5 million for this next year from December to December to support the middle school transformation. And then the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, also another $1.5 million to support our elementary work and some middle school and some of our diversity, equity, and inclusion work in the district. So the combination of this, these incredible partners are supporting our middle school transformation. I'd like to recognize Dan Keenan from the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, who is on in this meeting, and Kirsten Toth from the GAR Foundation, who is also in the meeting. I'd like them just to say quick welcome and explain why they're supporting this initiative. Dan, you want to start?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen, and thank you to the Board of Education and to David as well. So Jennings Foundation is thrilled to be a partner with Akron and to invest. And to us, it's important that we have great models in Ohio, because we know that terrific work is taking place here, and particularly for students who represent what Ohio public schools are about. It's about leveling that playing field and creating equitable circumstances. And so what we've always loved is the body of work of Akron schools. There's really three things that come to mind to me. Is the first is very transparent about your priorities, and the priorities are clear, that you want students to know that they matter, and you want their learning to matter to them. And that to us is just invaluable, having that priority. But then you take it and you align your work to that is the second thing. So it's not just having that priority and being transparent about it, but everything that you do, the deliberate nature, the detail that takes place, the research is just phenomenal. And we know that just wanting something to happen is different than wanting to happen and taking that next effort to align your work. And then the third thing that I think is really special that makes this a great investment for us is you're a great model for exactly what you're asking the kids to do. You take every facet of your community, every resource, and instead of using a deficit model for challenges, you take a value-added approach. And we appreciate that greatly. You look at how each community member, community partner, employee in your schools, students themselves can contribute towards the goal, and then you put it to work and align that as well. And to us, that's kind of some of the special sauce that we see. And you know, being part of the middle school to us is a small, you know, we feel great about being a small part of a bigger picture of synergy that takes place. And I love what was said earlier about, you know, knowing that you have a sense of belonging and you matter and contributing to something bigger than yourself. And that's how we feel in investing in Akron School. So thank you for the work that you're doing. We're excited that your priorities are straight and to be a part of that and to be a small part of the bigger picture here.
Thank you so much, Dan. And Mr. Keenan was instrumental in bringing the Hewlett Foundation to the district. He's the one who shepherded that whole relationship in. So thank you for that as well. Kirsten Toth from the GAR Foundation.
Thanks, Ellen. And thanks to my funder colleagues that are here, Dan and John Gaffalo, and I know I see Angie Beresford and others here. I think that exemplifies precisely why GAR Foundation has been in this commitment to APS and to our Akron families for so long, because we're all in this commitment to APS together. And Dan mentioned three key foundations as to why he's funding, and I could parrot the same things. You know, the reason that we support college and career academies and now the middle school transformation and essential experiences goes back before college and career academies. It goes to the STEM middle and high school. It goes to the early college, Akron Early College. It goes to Bookville High School transformation. These were all just stepping stones and building blocks onto this next phase of innovation and moving our families to the 21st and beyond century. So, you know, the leadership, Ellen and David and Mark Black and Ron Culver and Mary Kelly and everybody else that we get my deep privilege to work with. Three top things: transparency, relentless focus on high quality instruction and learning, and the leadership and everybody at Akron Public Schools is more than willing to learn as well and to bring us all with them. So there's no better investment for our funds, for our funding, and for our attention and our time. So thanks for letting us be part of this process.
Thank you very much. And lastly, I just want to showcase again, Rachel, if you can flip 2 slides to our partner visual that you've seen many, many times. We invited 2 of our key partner groups here because the middle school, as you heard from John Garofalo today, that it's going to be focused on connecting with the nonprofits. And we have this unbelievable partnership with United Way, and Angie Beresford is here from United Way, and they will actually be the recipient of the Hewlett grant and the CZI grant, and then will distribute the funds quarterly to us. But because of their commitment to recruit all the businesses for the high school, every Monday, the United Way and Connexus NEO will sit down, and now the Akron Community Foundation representative will sit down and manage all of these partnerships and relationships. So I do want to recognize Sue Lacey from Connexus, who is here, who is a key driver of our business partnerships and our business advisories and our industry sector partnerships at the high school, and Angie Beresford from United Way, who manages all of our partner broker for the high school, that now Akron Community Foundation will be adding that piece for the middle school. So thank you as well for being here. And lastly, Michael Householder, representing the Akron Education Association, has been instrumental on our executive committee and helping with the whole, bringing in all of the teachers who participated in the master planning process. So I will now turn it over to Lisa Mansfield and Valerie McKittrick if they want to add anything, and otherwise that concludes our presentation. The actual approval of the resolution will come towards the end of the meeting, and all of our partners don't have to stay that long until the end. We just wanted to recognize you here at the beginning of the meeting.
Very quickly, if I may. Thank you, everyone. And that's really what I want to say is thank you to the countless people who have put in countless hours to bring this to bear. And so the teaching staff, the administration, all our community partners, my heartfelt thanks for everything you've done to bring us to this point. And I look forward to having the middle school college and career academy transformation. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here, to all of you. I miss seeing so many of you out in the community. I know you're still doing all of your incredible work, even from our living rooms and dining rooms across the city. Just a few things that really stood out tonight: the idea of service learning, the sense of belonging, and family and student voices, such exciting things to hear, and building of strong, positive relationships. All of those things are things that when we listen to Salam, those are the things that she missed. You notice she didn't talk about, missing talking to her friends in the cafeteria, or missing, although that's relationship based too. She talked about those relationships with her teachers and with her fellow students. So we're listening to those things, and we're trying to build the base for when we can go back. The excitement of having this team working with us, John and Kirsten and Sue and Dan, and then our own staff, Mark, Rachel, Tamiko, Yvonne, and having Angie there to help us as well. I know I've probably missed tons of people, and none of that is anything without Ellen. She'll take no credit, and she continually forces us to the front. I can remember how when we first started talking about middle school, I kind of felt like when I'd had my first child and people came up to me and started talking about, when are you going to have another? And you're like, wait, can we just wait to see how this one works out for a second? But this team is not waiting. We're like right in it, continuing to build and to grow and to innovate. And there's no resting on laurels. The last steering committee meeting that I got to sit in on the elementary team. So kudos to all of you for not letting us rest, but pushing us forward to innovate so that our students and our community can continue to grow. Thank you so much.
To pick up there too and echo, I don't know that I could say it better than Mrs. McKittrick and Mrs. Mansfield, but I also want to say thank you to the board, the GAR Foundation, the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, Akron Community Foundation, Hewlett Foundation, Initiative, and our partners, Connexus, and Michael Householder and Pat Shipe at AEA, and to all of our staff. It can go without saying that we couldn't do this without you, but I think it needs to be said that we couldn't do what we're doing without you. Leadership to Dr. Ellen McWilliams-Woods and Dr. James for the vision and the leadership. And I think, you know, the funders that are here tonight, those that aren't, the partners that are here this evening and those that aren't, I think is really what sets Akron and its peers who are embarking on this initiative apart. And we're taking it even one step further, and what we've been able to put together here, or what our staff has been able to put together here. And so I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you. We really appreciate your support and your investment in this district and in our students. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. President, before we move on, this is Dr. Hall. I just had a quick question / comment, if I may.
Absolutely.
So again, you know, I can't say any more eloquently than Mr. Bravo, Ms. Mansfield, Ms. McVicker have. But my question is actually for Mr. Garofalo. So, you know, as I sit through board meetings, I try to listen with, you know, kind of the public ear and think about as I'm listening to things, what questions would I have? And so your organization is funding a position, that partner broker position. And so while I understand what that position is, I think it'd be great for the folks who are listening, you know, in the public to kind of hear you sort of unpack it a bit more and kind of talk about that role and how you envision sort of why you chose to fund that position sort of doing from a value add standpoint. Again, because I think that's an extra step that we definitely appreciate. So I want to give you that platform as well.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Hall. I think it's really the connectivity that we offer to the community and to really open up these students' eyes to thinking about a career in a nonprofit organization. I mean, I've been in nonprofits ever since I graduated from college 34 years ago, and nobody really taught me what it meant to work for a nonprofit organization or that there was even a career path in that field. So that's why we thought this was a great connection, because we have the connections with the nonprofit organizations, and that connectivity is so important to getting these kids turned on to a true passion that they may have that they may not know exists until they learn about this experience. So that's why we decided to throw our head into the ring and join forces with APS to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Akbar?
Yes, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to echo everyone else's sentiments and thank John, Kristen, Dan, Sue, and I think Angie. I think I got everybody right. I can't say some people's last name without messing it up, so I'm like, I can say the first names. But thank you very much for you and your organization's commitment to Akron Public Schools and to our students in this community. You know, Akron is a great place to live, work, and play. And if you think about our young people, specifically those who are from marginalized communities and those who live in poverty, one of the biggest things that the research tells us is that they want to give back to their community and to their families as a career and as a focus for their future. And so their choices typically are led through that. And so beginning that process of thinking about it, how do you professionalize that type of work through partnerships with nonprofits, through partnerships with the zoo, through partnerships with different organizations that you're going to bring to the table or have brought to the table. I think it's going to literally transform our young people's lives to not only do things that they can do in the future, but something that they probably will end up doing and beginning to commit their lives to service at a very early age. So thank you very much for your partnership. Thank you very much for your commitment, John, and your organization for funding the position. And thank you for everyone else's just sheer dedication to this process. Hats off to everyone involved. Dr. McWilliams-Woods, who won't ever take any credit, and Mr. Black and Mr. Hatcher, and everyone else. I'm probably missing some people, but I'm just in awe. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akbar. Dr. McWilliams-Woods or committee, anything else on this topic?
That's all for tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. And thank you again to our partners. You're more than welcome to stick around for our 5-year forecast, but please don't feel obliged if you have other things to do this evening. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to move to the next item on our agenda, the moment we've all been waiting for. We're going to turn it over to Mr. Pendleton and his spreadsheets, and we're going to talk about our 5-year forecast. Mr. Pendleton.
All right. Are you able to see the 5-year forecast slide? Okay. Is it the presentation view, I hope?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks to our partners in that setup in terms of understanding the ever-changing nature of school finances. And I think what prides me no more than to work with this board and community and partners is the framing that the finances really never get in the way of what's right for kids. And that's really the guiding light that is really humbling to work with. So hopefully that reflects in my spreadsheets or lack thereof in this presentation. Just really quick, in what are required to present to the board is a 5-year forecast, which serves as a tool to assess the school district's financial health. You're well aware that the district has 2 components to this. It's the historical and projected financial data, which we won't get into a lot of numbers, more about trend analysis, high-level results, and then the notes or significant changes and or assumptions. So we're going to talk about the assumptions a lot today because, as you well know, we're in pretty unprecedented times. So for the agenda for the 5-year forecast, overarching goal of showing this financial clarity. Kirsten talked about one of the initial goals they had or has been through the whole process was transparency. And I think through the board finance committee of the whole, and the return to RAP committee, this financial clarity and transparency has been steadfast throughout. Second, we're going to talk about the impact of COVID-19, and then there's the assumptions, and a heavy caution on assumptions. That's where we're going to spend the most of our time today. And then finally, we'll talk about future levy needs and hopefully framing that for future discussion. Before we get into the spreadsheet, the next slide, spreadsheet. COVID-19 has been, I'm sure all of you are reflecting the same, has been the most significant change to a set of circumstances that is very disruptive to families, disruptive to being a parent, disruptive to producing financial data and guiding principles around money so that sound decisions can be made throughout the board. This is by far the most significant. And I'm often reminded from my father, who's a retired superintendent, and I've talked to Superintendent James about this, that superintendent and board decisions, they resonate for a really long time. Like 7 years when you're talking about an academic program or middle school, college, and career academies. And so this is going to resonate for a really long time. Finance tends to be a lot shorter than this. We're going to talk about what COVID-19 has done to disrupt that stability and talk to you about some of the long-term implications of the finance. All right, this is the worst spreadsheet I have, Mr. Bravo. So I'm going to jump right to the end where everybody does in the 5-year forecast. If you already got the package today, you've gone to the bottom line, you say, how much cash do we have? Can we make it another year? I'll make it really simple. I know it's busy up top, but if you look at the top under fiscal 2021 in May, this was the May 5-year forecast, we talked very openly about a $15 million deficit. Remember, set the stage what was happening in May. We just started this global pandemic. We had just received word that there was going to be in upwards of 5 to 10, maybe even 20% budget cuts with the potential shutdown. We weren't really understanding how much federal stimulus dollars we were going to get. A lot of uncertainty, right? And then fast forward to today, in the bottom half of the screen is the November 2020 forecast that we're submitting tonight. And the delta of lessening that deficit by the tune of 13.2 some odd million dollars. And we're going to walk through some of those impacts. And you're all in luck. This isn't going to be hours-long presentation. Probably should be, but it's going to be relatively brief because what we talked about at Finance Committee, and I think we're all understanding, is these assumptions, these questions that we need to constantly ask and you're constantly debating in the board are driving our finances just the same. So we're going to be reviewing this 5-year forecast every month. And if something significant happens, a significant decision on behalf of the board, or significant that happens in terms of budget reductions or additional shutdowns with businesses or additional PPE, these are the kind of questions that you should be asking of your fellow board members, me, Finance Committee, and throughout the next few months. So let's walk through a little bit of what the impact of COVID-19 has on our current finances. These are the two columns are the two various pots of money that we've received that have been federal stimulus, and call them federal, state, and local grants, not including those of which we talked about tonight, which are really dedicated towards programming about assisting us through this time. And this is significant, right? This is $13, $14, $15 million that has to be spent according to some very strict guidelines. The first and the largest amount is the ESSER funds, which you've seen. And those are the dollars we've received, about 10.7 million, about $1.8 million spent in FY20 or last school year, and another $1.2 million spent this year. Well, why haven't we spent more of that 10.7 million? Remember, that's the most flexible pot of money that we have, can last us till September 2022. So 2022, these funds are good for. But CARES Act, the CRF, the Broadband Ohio Connectivity Grant, and then the CARES Act Summit COVID-19 Public School Reopening Grant all had to be allocated and spent before the end of this calendar year. Unfortunately, like many other school districts and government agencies, we were already down the tracks in terms of spending those dollars and coding those into the accounting system. So thanks to the finance office staff, specifically Todd Atkins, for being very flexible and going in now 2 and 3 different times into the accounting system, properly moving these so that that top set of funds, that 10.7 million ESSER funds, we have the most flexibility and last the longest. Now, for the first time, I'm going to try and show my Forecast 5 portal. Does everybody see Forecast 5?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Right, this is the first time, so I'm pretty excited about this, the tools that are available as we dive deeper into the Forecast 5 toolbox here. As you'll notice, this is a simplified financial statement that you saw in an earlier slide. I want to talk about an area of the forecast that doesn't get a lot of attention. It's the non-personnel expenses. I want to bring up this dashboard. And hopefully you're seeing, as everyone see the blue bar chart? Yeah. Okay, perfect. This is going to work perfectly. So that simplified financial statement, these are all expenses outside of personnel, right? So why is that important, Ryan? Well, we talk so much about our revenue stream. We talk so much about our levy stream, our property taxes versus our state aid. And then we talk a lot about personnel and retirements and benefits because it's such a large percentage. But what has the biggest impact on our forecast right now is our non-personnel expenditures. Let me bring this down to another level. And this is interactive, and what we do in Finance Committee is we start to isolate things. We start to say, well, why is capital, or why is purchase service? Why does it have the trend that it does? And so we can interact with these tools at a really high level. And what I want to come back up to this top bar chart. So this is all non-personnel expenses. Why is this chart important in the subtleties of this chart? Look back to fiscal 2018. So that's the 2017-18 school year and fiscal year. And through 2019, as we're approaching discussions and deficit spending, as we're still tightening our belt, preparing the community for potential levy talks, and then what happens in fiscal 20 or the 19-20 school year come March with a global pandemic. We have shutdown. You can see it reflects in the 78.5 million to the 76.7 million. Now here's where the financial transparency and why we're going to continue on this discussion and why this is going to resonate for a little while longer. So the assumptions present in the 2020 and 2021, where you see this 76.7 to 76.3, it's rather flat. But we're not in school, Ryan, so why isn't it why isn't it a significant drop? The assumptions, and to remain conservative with school district finances so that you don't knee-jerk or pendulum swing a decision with finances that has other ramifications that impact classroom, which is one of our guiding values, is to produce a trend that allows us to make decision, but again, isn't knee-jerk. So in 2021, with the likelihood that we could be coming back after the first of the year in a blended environment, could be extending a school year, there could be opportunities for intensives over a summer after a vaccine becomes available. After a vaccine becomes available, hopefully in the first or early second quarters of the year, we could infuse a lot of resources into wrapping around kids to provide instructional days in person, albeit it could be significantly social distanced, and it's going to increase our transportation costs tenfold. And then why, Ryan, are we looking at a fiscal 21 to fiscal 22 in a significant jump? Well, the assumption in fiscal 22 is we are back in full-time instruction with all 21,000 of our students. Why is it a jump that seems a little bit larger than inflation? And if you go back to those questions, and we'll finish out with those same assumptions, we really need to go back to fiscal 18 and fiscal 19 to get a real baseline. And if we just apply some simple inflation to this from 2018 to 2022, that's just a little over 3%. That's not uncommon. That's not out of line for the kind of expenses that we're talking about. Just bringing back transportation over the life of the forecast, albeit even though we're operating many more buses and drivers than what people think because of our requirements with community, non-public, and charter and the way schools are funded, this will add tens of millions of dollars to the forecast. So we do want to prepare our finances for full in-person instruction, blending that from the end of this school year into the start of next school year. And just to show you the depth, we can look at these charts in live time now. I did receive a question from a board member about total district benefits, and it was framed in light of negotiations and virtual instruction, and a lot of our staff who are receiving healthcare benefits, which is, as we've talked about, one of the second largest expenditure we have in the budget. And so I just want to show you a little bit more detail regarding this and how these benefits are playing out. You can see from fiscal 19 to fiscal 20, Really, this is when the global pandemic started to take hold of us, and a lot of people stayed home and still are. In fact, fiscal 21, where we are, we're still operating at a 3 to 5% trend assumption. And right now it's coming in less than that. If you compare our fiscal 21 to fiscal 19, you see it's not coming up with that kind of inflation. Healthcare specifically, you can see a little bit, and this is $40 million spend for the district. Again, we're a service-oriented business, so personnel and benefits are our largest expenditures. You can see that same subtle drop from fiscal 19, 20 to 21, with just getting back to some inflationary trend in 22. And then just for those who are listening, we're trending at about a 5 to a 7% rate on 2023 through 2025 on out. That's beating some national statistics, and that's credit to our bargaining groups for partnering with us on plans like Paladina. I'm going to go back to the presentation. I was excited to be able to share. Does everybody see the slide deck again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As we round out the 5-year forecast presentation and open it up for questions, this chart, this simple back of the envelope napkin graphic, I think is where we should spend some time talking. Definitely in committee level, and maybe even our monthly report out from Finance Committee. But assumptions, what assumptions are we driving the forecast? And then what actions? And I love this. When I found this, I love this because it shows you how serious we are about the discussion and how the board and governance structure of a public school is not going to take action when the known is in the highlighted section in the middle. So if we have global pandemic pulling on one side and a presence or force to make us take action on another, we're going to make some sound decisions based on known items. And that's why I say we're going to save you from the hours of presentation tonight and just kind of set the stage for future discussions. This is the snapshot of the 5-year forecast that we're submitting tonight to the Department of Education. You can see that we've gone from a little over $15 million deficit for this fiscal year to -2. Depending on what we do the rest of the year, that'll have a major determination about what cash balances and what deficit spending we'll have throughout the rest of the year. I want to stop here and highlight the section in the red, and because I do want to set the stage for future levy needs. And even know that we're not in-person instruction, and even know that we've received federal stimulus dollars, there is going to be long-term ramifications to our finances. There are going to be PPE technology costs, additional cleaning costs, to the likes we've never seen before, and they're going to become permanent parts of our budget. Remember that ESSER funds, that large pot, the $10.7 million, there's been no reauthorization of additional monies. So those kind of increased costs, now just to put it in perspective, I don't want to belabor the point, but to put it in perspective, that's $10.7 million that needs to last us till 2022 on a $370 million budget. We have been able, with good active management on behalf of the board and leadership, a belt tightening that we showed you in 2019 to stay off the ballot now for 8+ years, maybe a year longer. So let's leave the board with those timelines. And I've added a new timeline in here just for you to reflect on. Again, no decisions have to be made, but those timelines are as follows. The May 4th, 2020 election, what we were previously talking about. That's obviously before the likelihood of a virtual school year or a blended school year. This has been some time ago. And I'm going to add on to the right so that you can see, and I'll email this presentation out if it's not in your board packet, the November 2nd election for levy timeframe, of which it'll be 9 years then. There's still a need for additional revenues. It is our time. We're still deficit spending, but we are actively managing, transparently managing those finances. Last slide I have is what's next. What's next for virtual learning? What's next for additional federal stimulus and those additional related expenses to operate? Will we likely have summer interventions where we finally have a vaccine and that we're able to reach our children in more significant ways than what we are? So with that, I will turn it over to questions.
Thank you. And we do have a couple of folks lining up with questions. Mr. Pendleton, as I hand it over to some other folks with questions too, I have, I suppose, a statement and a question, but it's not necessarily just the deficit spending itself, right? Because if we were to save money for a large purchase that we wanted to make in a future year, there's a potential that we would obviously deficit spend. So it's not the deficit spending itself, but it's also that ending cash balance and where that puts us. And we notice in your forecast, of course, that there is a future year coming up where there really is sort of a cliff with or without levies in place. And I wonder if you might talk about that just a little bit, and also our cash reserve policy and where our current 5-year forecast puts us. And finally, as a follow-up to that, we have, well, I'll let you start there, but I also kind of, well, I'll let you start there.
Okay.
And then follow up.
So the cliff and the cash reserve policy, thanks for mentioning both of those. As you know, the most important line item in the 5-year forecast for those who are watching in the board is that revenue surplus or deficit. And in your materials, you see that even though we trim that deficit, we are still deficit spending pretty significantly next year, to the tune of about 12.8 million. But you start to look out in odd years and we're deficit spending 23 million and 30 million, reaching into our cash reserves. And so that sets the stage for your next question is our cash reserve policy currently stands at a recommended practice of having greater than 10% to our overall budget and spend. And so we do violate that cash reserve policy. It's not a shall and steadfast in the policy, but it is a recommendation that not only that we engage the board, but the community in those discussions long before that happens so that we're not doing that. That's only two school years away. And you all know a levy cycle, any levy that's passed in 2021 doesn't collect until January of 2022. So it is very relevant to be talking about an operating levy now when we technically violate that cash reserve policy in the 22-23 school year, not just 2 years away, with only $30 million in cash on our books.
And that's a segue into my follow-up, and then I'll hand it off to Mr. Alexander and Dr. Akbar. Given the pretty substantial disruption that COVID-19 is having on operations and finances, how often, we typically bring this 5-year forecast, at least publicly, twice a year in May and October. We know that you keep more of a real-time view. Would you envision that we would be sort of revisiting the 5-year forecast a little more frequently over the next year or so, given the disruption that's going on?
We definitely will. I would say we do review this every month. We've included some new slides in the monthly financial report that has the simplified financial statement right there in the early part of that document. And then we did talk about a larger state of the schools in terms of finances, about having that this month and partnering with the superintendent. I think we're going to add that in January or February so that we know a little bit more of the assumptions that are having an impact to our forecast. So definitely we will be sharing this more often than not.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander, and then Dr. Akbar.
Thanks, Ryan. That was a very good report as usual. And we know that in the past we have had to cut, and we've cut according to what we needed to cut, and we've also cut to a point where we were almost down to bones. And we can't cut bones and be able to survive. With the forecast you're given today, and this is just so the public can have a clear understanding. Without it, what can we do with our finances at this point? Or is there anything else we can do to help move forward without having to do anything drastically, or without having to put a levy on?
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, with the way the state of Ohio schools are funded, and you all know the efforts that we're taking with the General Assembly, is every school district has its time, whether it's 3 years or 5 years or sometimes 10, depending on if it's a high growth district or low, or whether it's dependent on the state or local more. Ours on average is about every 6 years. When we look back over, I think the last 30 years that we've talked about, we've extended this 1/8, likely 9. So as far as that value, Mr. Alexander, of transparency, efficient government spending, efficient metrics, we hit the marks. We really do hit the marks. It is unfortunate that when we go back to the public, sometimes it is viewed as we're not hitting marks, but I stack up our efficiency ratings from transportation to operations to spending per pupil to anyone. I think our staff does an amazing job of that. But I think the most important thing to this, Mr. Alexander, is doing just what we're doing tonight and through Finance Committee, is continually sharing our story, sharing where we're spending this PPE money on, whether it be getting technology in the hands of students and hotspots, to making sure that our equipment and technology is leveling the playing field and supporting instruction. So I think that's what we knock out of the park, frankly.
Right. And with COVID, that really put a hamper on everything. And so we basically need the public to know that we're going to be putting a levy on the ballot, and we're going to need the help. And we know it gets difficult and it's tough at times, but we have no choice. This is all we have. I mean, I wish we had a better funding source formula so we can fund schools a little better and not have to rely on the public. But we need it in order to keep Akron Public Schools afloat. And I just want everybody out there to know that when we put a levy on, we're going to need it. It's important, and not just for us as the board, the superintendent, the treasurer, and all, but for our students. That's the most important, and not just the students as well, but the teachers. Because we need the teachers to be here to teach the kids what they need, and we also need those students to be able to get the best educational experiences they have. And I want the public to know that we're actually doing the best we can with what we have, and if we have to go to the ballot, we just have to, because we're going to need their help. So anybody who's out there listening, we want you to know that we're going to need your help so we can continue the type of education we're giving our kids. If not, then our kids suffer, school district suffers, and then part of our city suffers as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Dr. Akbar?
Yes, very similar thought process and train of thought as Mr. Alexander. One of my biggest concerns, honestly, isn't the things that we know currently. So what type of things you're factoring in currently. One of the biggest concerns for what I see when I look at that 5-year forecast are all the unknown costs and all the things that we don't know what might happen. So for example, we have done a great job of utilizing, the partnership and the funds to build the majority of our schools, but there are some schools that are not rebuilt. And to think about this time frame where the buildings haven't been fully operational in the way that they normally are, I'm wondering if deferred maintenance on some of those major items that are needed in certain buildings, if that's calculated into this forecast, and if so, how does that factor in, considering all the schools that with the things we know they need, and those things that may just come up, those big ticket items that we talked about a few months ago that one of the schools needed.
That's right. And we did, Dr. Akbar, to your question, spend more time talking about those kind of items prior to the global pandemic. So the answer is yes and no. Yes, we do include, unfortunately, in our general fund, because we don't have additional permanent improvement levy funds available to us, we include the regular and routine maintenance of our buildings, new and old, out of general fund. No, we do not have budget available for multiple roofs or building envelope issues or HVAC issues. Those we will need to address long term. Our staff does an amazing job keeping our buildings up and running, safe, warm, and dry. However, we've talked long term, we're going to have some buildings to address, and that is not included in the forecast. So to replace one of our buildings that hasn't or wasn't addressed through the School Facilities Commission, that is not budgeted.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And you brought up in your report about the need for a levy in the January 11th date for the first resolution. That is around the corner. And I'm not concerned about it. Well, I am actually. I don't even want to lie about that. That's probably not the best word for me to use because I am concerned. I think that's actually our organizational meeting date. And I'm just wondering if, just as we move forward, maybe in the next week or so, if you could just give the board that timeline you just gave, and then maybe we need to have a retreat, not just to talk about the levy, but to talk about the levy and maybe even just all these other things about the unknowns that may come up, and things we need to prepare for in the new year, plus a recap from this year. I think Patrick and I briefly talked about that this morning. So yeah, that's kind of nerve-wracking.
Through our finance committee meetings. And then, you know, there's two places in my presentation that you mentioned and what you're most concerned about, what's not listed on the forecast, right? So from March and May forecast to now, there's been so much more information that we've gleaned about this and how we're operating. And I do believe that over the next few weeks and into early January, that will be telling as well. But that's why I included the November election timeframe in here, because I do want the board not to feel as if it's being forced to put a May initiative on, and be able to, in a sense, if we can balance the budget for this school year, in a sense, we bought ourselves a year, right? Remember, so we were, just a real highlight from that busy slide up front, we were minus $15 million. And now we're sitting at a -2 deficit spend. Some of these unknowns regarding our decision of in-person or blended learning are going to have major implications on our finances. That being said, our financial position is a little improved, but still deficit spending. So wait and see, continued discussion, obviously, but that's why I wanted to include the November 2nd election on there.
Good, thank you. I didn't see anyone else, but is there, well, wait a minute.
McKittrick.
Ms. McKittrick?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick comment. I know we talked about how our deficit spending went from 15 million to 2 million, but I want to reassure people because it's been suggested that one of the reasons we're keeping kids out of school is as a cost-saving measure. And I feel very strongly, and I'm pretty sure I speak for the entire board when I say, by no means has that ever even been a consideration. In fact, it's really a rather repugnant idea to all of us, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
We all want our children back in school, no matter what it costs, right? But the one thing we're not willing to risk, I suppose I want to say, is anyone's health. So to anyone listening out there who's thought that perhaps we're keeping kids out of school to save money, please understand and please know that by no means is that the reason your kids are learning remotely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McKittrick. Anyone else? Hearing and seeing none, we do have a resolution to approve under section 3.3 of your agenda. It's the resolution for approval of the 5-year forecast beginning fiscal year 21, and it's resolution 20-162. We'll entertain a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
We have a motion from Dr. Akbar and a second from Ms. McKittrick. Mrs. McKittrick, any comments, questions, or discussion? All right. Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is approval of the regular meeting minutes for Monday, November 16th, 2020. We'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion from Mrs. McKittrick, a second from Mrs. Mansfield. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bravo,
I muted too quickly. Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent's recommendations, personnel.
Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the personnel recommendations presented in categories 5 through 16.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on the personnel recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion from Mr. Alexander, a second from Mrs. McKittrick. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the personnel recommendations? And seeing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the resolutions and motions presented in category 21.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion by Mr. Alexander, a second by Mrs. McKittrick. Any comments, questions, or discussion on consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please.
Dr. Hall,
Oh, I got to go first this time. Okay. Yeah, aye. First time ever. Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Now you,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo.
yes. Now, you know, a little fun fact, once upon a time, it used to be in alphabetical order starting with A and going to the end every single time. And Mr. Pendleton, when he started, discovered that in the event of a split board, it would always make the person whose last name was last in the alphabet the ability to have the tie-breaking vote every single time. So if you'll notice now, just a fun fact, he rotates it. It's always in alphabetical order, but it always starts with the next person in alphabetical order. So just a little fun fact for you.
And to
That's
that,
awesome. That's
thank
awesome.
you, since I'm last alphabetically, I appreciate that.
I'll mix it up, Dr. Hall.
Thank you, sir.
All right, and finally, Mr. President, I wish to recommend approval of the business affairs recommendations presented in category 23.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. A motion by Mrs. McKittrick, a second by Mr. Alexander. Any comments, questions, or discussion on the business affairs items? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, several items this evening, Mr. President. One is Governor DeWine signed House Bill 404, and part of that included extending the authorization for the boards, including public school boards, to continue to have virtual meetings. That was supposed to expire tomorrow. It now goes through July 1st of 2021. I know many of you saw the news piece about Chromebooks. We had a public records request from a news channel about that. So for 2019 and 20, we issued about 20,403 Chromebooks. And out of that, that year, about 715 were deemed as lost. And this has been, when we started this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that was a big concern. So yes, we do have, for some, I think in terms of elementary, they're pretty good of keeping track of their Chromebooks. I think the problem's at middle school where, either the thing got dropped and someone says it's lost because it can't be repaired, or it's been left someplace, but we do have the ability when those are pinged to shut them off. I know Deborah Folk can address like any insurance issues. Howard Lawson can address, more technical details of how those things are shut off so they can't be used any further. So far in the 2021 fiscal year, about 20,115 Chromebooks out there with our students, and about 438 of those have been deemed lost, either stolen, broken, and not turned in. And we have been, most of the time with most people, if they're coming forward with a broken Chromebook, it's replaced. But these are actually ones where they don't have the Chromebook to return. I just wanted to provide that short update. The next one regarding COVID, I did send out correspondence and some information to the board regarding athletics, postponing the actual start of more of our regular season games. There were 3 that had been previously scheduled, so I let those go. We also got our rapid COVID tests in, and that testing actually starts this week. And so we're trying to keep our kids in their respective bubbles and reinforcing the things that they need to be careful of when they're not with us, after hours. to make sure their seasons, don't get interrupted. I can say that we have had, some issues with, I know one of the latest ones was a coach, I think, who had a sibling who got COVID, and that caused one of our teams to have to isolate, because of their proximity to the adult and not necessarily a student. So when Summit County came out with their stay-at-home advisory, we thought it would be prudent to, postpone those games that weren't scheduled until after that advisory expires. I believe that's December 16th. And so after that, we want to be able to resume, but we'll look at what the data, is showing us. I know there's been a lot of concern about the Thanksgiving weekend that we just had and whether people were going to gather. So those are some of the things that went into that decision. The other one is our Remote Plus, looking at starting, postponing the start of that. We were going to start actually today with that. But again, conferring with Summit County Public Health and some of the things that we were seeing, these high rates of infection. And now, Summit County, Stark County, I believe Medina County are all on the watch. So we could go into the purple category as early as this week, but we'll have to see how that goes. So at a minimum, looking at doing the Remote Plus in January. I know I'd like to thank Dr. Hall for sending some additional information. I shared with him, and I'll send that to the board later this evening, kind of a draft piece where we could make some decisions about how we're going to go. So for instance, in the purple zone, it would be 100% remote instruction. In the red zone, as long as we're not like on the watch like we are now, it could be more of the Remote Plus. In orange and yellow, there really, to me, is not much of a difference between the two. And I think we should look at a blended model. Our decisions will need to be whether, if we're going to do that blended model, what's the level of infection in the community? And from all the research that, we've seen, kids under 10 aren't necessarily, it's not that they can't get infected with COVID, they can, but they don't have the serious symptoms that people over 10, particularly adults, have. And so those are some things that, we have to really look at in terms of, if we, at one point we propose bringing back or trying to bring back our, kindergarten through second or third grade students. And so those are some things that we'll have to approach, but we can't, I think our speaker tonight was correct. We can't have a whole year of kids, being on remote. We're going to have to, my concern are those younger kids and of course our seniors, and make sure they can graduate. So we may have to look at, as Ryan pointed out in his 5-year forecast, a summer period where we may have to offer some services to our students. So I hope to be able to send something to you all in advance of our next board meeting. And then after we get back, looking at, with our Remote Plus, looking at where we then transition from there.
Mr. Bravo, I just want to say something. Dr. James, thanks for giving us that report, because I saw on the news this morning on Fox 8 that they were saying that we were starting. And so I kind of, wait a minute, I know you sent out to us that we weren't starting.
Right.
So I want to make sure that I did ask Mr. Bravo to ask you to give an update on that, because we need to know and people need to know, because the news is saying one thing and we know what we're actually doing. So I wanted that.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander and Dr. James. For my report tonight, just a couple of quick things. Many of you will notice, and certainly the public that's watching may notice, that Ms. Autry is not here with us this evening. She did touch base with me yesterday evening, and unfortunately her father has passed away. And so she is working through that with her family at this time. And so we just want to send out our thoughts and our prayers to Ms. Autry and her family. let her know that we're thinking about her, and that we'll make sure that she stays up to speed on everything we're doing here, but did want to let everyone know that. For the benefit of the public, even more so than the board, we have finished our evaluations for the year as of our last meeting. We completed Mr. Pendleton's evaluation. Just a reminder to our board, those were our summative evaluations. Our formative evaluations will take place after the beginning of the new year. And so we'll keep you posted on that as we move forward. On our superintendent search, just want to draw your attention to Mr. Horton's emails to the board. He has sent out some additional information, including the revised timeline, as well as the doodle poll that we discussed during our last special meeting. So if you could please take time and complete that so that we can start to put dates on the calendar, at least holds on the calendar. Mr. Pendleton also sent me the contract and salary information that we spoke about during that special meeting. And so I'll be forwarding that on to all of our board members so that you have a good perspective of where we are currently as we start to talk about where we're going. And then spoke with Dr. Akbar today, and I'll be sending it, the advanced APS document back to him for review after we finish consolidating our notes, which hopefully will be tomorrow. And then that will go back out to the board and to senior staff to plug in some holes and for some edits so that we can finish that portion as we prepare for our upcoming meetings on the superintendent search. That's it for me. Treasurer's report.
Just a quick update that House Bill 305, Senate Bill 376 is entering its final 2 weeks of testimony. We'll be issuing testimony between the House and the Senate, and House in the morning, Senate in the afternoon, with a wrap up and closing in the Senate tomorrow. There's talks potentially of a vote in the House for committee and possibly the whole on Thursday. So stay tuned to that and I'll keep you posted.
Any contingency plan for current weather?
Driving down tonight, so I don't have to mess with the snow in the morning. No, the testimony will take place regardless.
Okay.
I know you weren't directing that at me, we're directing that at anyone coming down. But
Good, safe travels.
Thanks.
All right, under committee reports, legal contracts and board policy.
No report.
Thank you. Finance and capital management.
Yeah, it's just me tonight. Again, condolences out to Miss Autry. Again, she couldn't be here. She's my partner on finance, so I'll be giving her out solo tonight. So to jump in, the Finance Committee met November 23rd, and the following folks were present: Ms. Autry, Mr. Bravo, myself, Ms. McKittrick, Dr. James, Dr. McWilliams-Woods, Mr. Pendleton, and Ms. Tecca. And what follows is some highlights from that committee meeting. Mr. Pendleton updated the committee regarding draft House Bill 305. You've probably heard us talking about this multiple times. It's now being referred to as the Fair School Funding Plan, and so there's a list of districts that are available to reach out to and encourage the treasurer, superintendent, and legislators to pass that bill. So, that's kind of the activist part of this. That those of you who may be watching, in the public, again, please have a look at that list. Also, as well, Senate Bill 89 was passed as well. This is also tied to Ed Choice, which you've heard us talk quite a bit about in these meetings as well. This bill basically sort of makes some changes to sort of, to what schools will and won't qualify as Ed Choice. This also, I know that it would impact the federal poverty number. I think it goes to 250%. So obviously that would increase the number of students that are eligible to apply for the voucher. This is important because it can impact Akron's per pupil funding. So, and then we also talked about, again, I think as you heard earlier, Dr. McWilliams-Woods provided an update to Finance Committee where we talk through the budget as well as the 5-year forecast as it related to the middle schools, college, and career academy program. And so, and you also heard that we got a number of grants to help sort of cement that plan. So, and then also Mr. Pendleton shared a 5-year forecast, which he, essentially previewed for you all here tonight. Again, we first discussed that in Finance Committee. And I know moving forward, some of the themes of the forecast, of our forecasting will, again, providing additional financial clarity on not just the knowns, but as the unknowns become a bit more or a bit less opaque, we'll be, sort of endeavoring to share more information around that. The impact of COVID-19, and one thing I'll say to that is one of the things that we didn't talk about tonight that I'm sure we'll have to talk about moving forward is that, as vaccines become available, we'll have to sort of start to think through, those vaccine costs, are anywhere from $3 to $37 per dose, with varying degrees of side effects and whatnot. And so I know that this board is going to have to figure out, along with Dr. James and his team, sort of, what role, if any, does APS have in helping to address some of the costs as relates to that vaccine, and what do we do from a policy standpoint around around students and teachers getting that vaccine. I know that, and we all know that there are a number of folks who, for whatever reason, are opposed to getting any sort of vaccine. And so as we sort of start to think through, our plans in January, as this vaccine begins to come online, it's going to create even more items for this board and along with Dr. James's team to really be thinking about. And how that impacts us both in the short, medium, and long term financially as well. So that would conclude the Finance Committee update. I'll see the floor back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Instructional policy and student achievement.
No further report.
Thank you. Under item 29 on our agenda for unfinished business, we do have the College and Career Academies Master Plan. The board has been requested to adopt that. So at this time, we'll entertain a motion for approval of the College and Career Academies Master Plan for middle school.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Mrs. Mansfield, a second from either Mrs. McKittrick or Mr. Alexander. Not sure who came in first. It was a photo finish. Any comments, questions, or discussion before we vote on the middle school plan?
Yeah, I've got a comment, Mr. President, if I may.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I want to thank Dr. McWilliams-Woods for spending the time that she took to ensure that the board members, several of us who are new, were up to speed and kind of in the loop as to sort of how this has sort of the history, and then also sort of both current state and sort of where we're going. So, there's a cadence of meetings that she sort of made us aware of and has invited us to help ensure moving forward that we stay in the loop because that's important as well. So, so want to thank her for that, for investing the time. It's in several of us who needed a remedial course in some of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. McKittrick,
Yes.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there is a need for executive session tonight pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G2 to consider the sale of property, and also Revised Code Section 121.22G3 to meet with board legal counsel to discuss disputes involving the board and or the school district that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion for executive session.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion from Dr. Hall. I believe we had a second from Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Akbar,
Yes.
Mr. Alexander,
Yes.
Mr. Bravo,
Yes.
Dr. Hall,
Aye.
Mrs. Mansfield,
Yes.
Mrs. McKittrick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to head over to executive session now. If everyone could remember to exit out of this meeting, and we'll be back momentarily.
Marilyn, be sure you click out.
Mr. Rittenhouse, if you want to flip the switch.
Thank you.
Thank you and welcome back to the Akron Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting for Monday, November 30th, 2020. We've just returned from executive session. There's no further items or action to come before this board. So at this time, we will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Wait, duly noted. We'll pick them out there. We have motions and second for adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Everybody have a good night.
Good
Good night,
evening.
everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Good night. Be careful.